As expected, the GDP at constant prices recorded a negative growth of minus 7.3%. The first time India has recorded negative annual growth since 1979-80. Three numbers of GDP at constant prices will highlight the parlous state of the economy. In 2018-19, GDP was 140 lakh crore. In 2019-20, it was 145.69 lakh crore. And in 2020-21, it was 135.12 lakh crore. The increase in 2019-20 was modest at 4%, but the decline in 2020-21 was severe at minus 7.3%. The net result is that the GDP in 2020-21 is lower than the GDP of 2 years ago. That is, it is lower than the GDP of 2018-19. 2020-21 has been the darkest year of the economy in 4 decades. The performance in the 4 quarters of 2020-21 tells the story. The first 2 quarters witnessed a recession, minus 24.4% and minus 7.4%. The performance in the third and fourth quarters did not herald a recovery. The estimated rates of 0.5% and 1.6% were due to a very low base of 3.3 and 3.0% in the corresponding quarters of the previous year. Besides, these rates come with a number of caveats. When the first wave of the pandemic appeared to subside last year, the finance minister and her chief economic advisor began to sell the story of a recovery. They saw what they called green shoots when no one else did. They predicted a V-shaped recovery. It was a false story, and we had expressed our strong reservations and warned there were no signs of a recovery. We had pointed out that what the economy needed was a strong dose of stimulus, including increased government expenditure, direct transfers of cash to the poor, and liberal distribution of free rations. Our pleas fell on deaf ears, and the result is a negative growth of minus 7.3%. What is most worrying is that the per capita GDP has fallen below rupees 1 lakh. It has fallen to rupees 99,694. In percentage terms, it is a decline of minus 8.2% over the previous year. It is lower than the level achieved in 2018-19 and maybe even lower than 2017-18. The deeply worrying conclusion is that most Indians are poorer than they were 2 years ago. Let me repeat that. Most Indians are poorer than they were 2 years ago. The press note of the NSO reveals that in respect of most economic indicators, they are worse than what they were 2 years ago. Examples are private consumption, gross fixed capital formation, exports, and imports. The current state of the economy is no doubt largely due to the impact of the pandemic, but it has been compounded by the ineptitude and incompetent economic management of the BJP-led NDA government. Good advice by distinguished economists and renowned institutions has been rebuffed. Worldwide experience has been ignored. Suggestions on fiscal expansion and cash transfers have been turned down. Hollow packages like Atmanirbhar have fallen flat. We are glad that the two leading chambers of commerce and industry, the CII and FICCI, have in the last few days echoed our views and pleaded for fiscal expansion, including cash transfers to the poor. The RBI's monthly review has flagged the demand shock and its consequences. The CMIE report on loss of jobs and growing unemployment is alarming. The research and survey reports of Aziz Premji University have concluded that 23 crore people have been pushed below the poverty line and into indebtedness. We may note that Nobel laureate Dr. Abhijit Banerjee has called for printing money and increasing spending. Yet, even as recently as yesterday morning, the finance minister gave a long interview to some newspapers defending her misguided and disastrous policies. The second wave of the pandemic is upon us. So far, it seems to be following the same pattern as the first wave, except that it has wrought more damage in terms of numbers of infections and deaths. If 2021-22 should not go the same way as 2021 did, the government must wake up, admit its errors of commission and omission, reverse its policies, and heed the advice of economists and the opposition. Thank you. I'm willing to take your questions.
Thank you, sir. Please indicate your question.
सर पूछूं ज्ञानेंद्र
जी पूछें
जी चिदम्बरम सर मेरा सवाल है कि जैसा आपने अपने स्टेटमेंट में भी कहा कि कुछ अर्थशास्त्रियों ने सरकार को नोट प्रिंट करने का सुझाव दिया है, आपकी क्या राय है? क्या आप भी इस सुझाव के फेवर में हैं कि मौजूदा परिस्थिति में सरकार को प्रिंट करना चाहिए करेंसी?
Yes, if necessary, the government must print money. We have the space and the sovereign right to print money. And if at any point the government feels that too much money has been printed, it can always stop printing money. But at the moment, I think printing money is clearly advised. And I'm very happy that someone so distinguished as Dr. Abhijit Banerjee has supported the idea. There are many other economists who have recommended that government must print money to support its expenditure.
Thank you, sir. I'll move to the next one. Supriya Bhardwaj from TV9.
Good afternoon, sir. The question is in connection with the job. There are reports which are suggesting that approximately 1 crore jobs have been lost ever since the pandemic started since last year. And at the same time, also, what's your take on the situation of income being reduced in various sectors and what you have just mentioned, 23 crore people being pushed below poverty line?
Yeah, all these are clear indicators that the economy is in dire straits. The CMIE is the only reliable periodic report that we get on employment and unemployment. They have highlighted, and Mr. Mahesh Vyas has come on several shows to say, two things are absolutely true. One, the labor force participation rate is declining and unemployment is growing. I've given out the figures in my column last Sunday. Unemployment has now crossed 11%. And this is a fact. Azim Premji University research shows that 23 crore people may have been pushed below the poverty line. Now this almost completely wipes out the 27 crore people who were lifted out of poverty in the 10-year period 2004-5 to 14-15 as reported by the World Bank. So what do we have today? We have a labor force participation which is declining. unemployment which is growing, both urban and rural, and more people falling below the poverty line and borrowing money. Now, all this points to deep misery among the poor people. Yes, the very rich have become very rich. The upper middle class is comfortable behind its gated communities, but the middle class, what we call the lower middle class, and the poor have been greatly affected, and this government has no concern. What did the Prime Minister say in his Mann Ki Baat? He said we are giving free rations of 5 kilograms to each person. Now, what does that amount to? It amounts to 32 rupees per capita per month. Does the situation require a relief of only 32 rupees per person? That is why we say cash transfers must be done. And I find more and more writers, more and more economists are supporting cash transfers. There are ways in which cash can be transferred. But this government is completely insensitive, completely impervious to what the lower middle class and the poor are going through. They seem to be quite happy because the stock market is booming and the existing billionaires have added more billions to their wealth.
Thank you, sir. I'll move to the next one. Jiggies from Hindu Business Line.
Good morning, sir. So what will be the impact on this deficit on the healthcare? I mean, announcement made in budget and later on the healthcare sector, like vaccination and other programs. What do you think will be the impact of this?
You see, this is not the time to worry about the fiscal deficit. For 21-22, they have projected a fiscal deficit of about 5.5. What if it becomes 6.5? So what? According to me, it won't make any difference at all. It should not make any difference. It should not stop us. What we need is we can't lose another year like we lost the whole of last year. And I'm afraid the way this government is reacting, it's going to lose another year. Fortunately, we are only in the beginning of June, the first day of June. We still have 10 months. This is the time to act. This is the time to act boldly and decisively. Borrow and spend. If necessary, print money and spend. Spend on healthcare. Spend on infrastructure. But spend. And as part of spending, spend on welfare measures also, which today means cash transfers plus distribution of rations without a price.